Charlie Kirk, a prominent voice in the American conservative movement, has recently passed away suddenly. I know this has come as a great shock to many of you, but everyone, do you know where his last overseas visit was? It was South Korea. This fact weighed heavily on me, and so I began to take a deeper look into the nation of South Korea. Historically, South Korea is a nation that was given two great opportunities by the United States. It gained its chance for independence when Japan surrendered to the U.S. in World War II, and it escaped the crisis of communism with America's help during the Korean War in 1950. However, as I investigated this nation, I came to a startling and deeply concerning conclusion. South Korea, once one of America's strongest allies, is now silently heading down the path of communism. Let's analyze the final message Charlie Kirk delivered on September 5, 2025, at the Build Up Korea conference in Seoul. He already knew everything and was sounding the alarm. First, the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. Charlie Kirk clearly stated that the CCP intends to swallow up the Republic of Korea and dominate not just Asia, but the entire world. He stressed that South Korea must not yield to China's influence. Second, the perversion of democracy. He criticized how radical leftist forces use democracy as a tool for dictatorship and warned that South Korea is also facing this threat. And finally, he directly mentioned the reality of pastors being arrested and families being investigated within South Korea. He then left a stark warning that if the South Korean government does not stop these actions, the United States might intervene in the name of justice. Defend your freedom and independence. This was his final cry. That's right, Charlie Kirk had already seen right through South Korea's path to communism. This is in the same vein as when President Donald Trump posted on his social media, "What the hell is going on in South Korea?" And the reality I've encountered in South Korea is that his concerns have already largely become a reality. Allow me to present some of the concrete evidence of South Korea's communist takeover that I have found. The first piece of evidence is the majority opposition party's abuse of the impeachment process. The Democratic Party of Korea, holding the largest number of seats in the National Assembly in history, has used its power to push for indiscriminate impeachments against President Yoon Suk-yeol, his cabinet ministers, and other high-ranking officials. This was a clear attempt to paralyze the functions of the government. They used impeachment as a tool for political strife based on absurd reasons, and they didn't stop even after the Constitutional Court repeatedly dismissed their attempts. They did this even at the risk of creating a vacuum in state affairs. Is this what a normal democratic country looks like? The second piece of evidence is the collapse of law and order and the suspicion of foreign interference. Recently, there was a shocking scene at a rally protesting the president's impeachment. As you can see, an unidentified individual in a South Korean police uniform is controlling the scene. Citizens grab him, demand to see his identification, and ask nearby police officers for help. But how do the police on the scene react? Instead of verifying the suspicious person's identity, they actually appeared to be helping him escape the scene. Why does this remind me of the Chinese public security officers who were suppressing the Hong Kong protests in 2019? This incident raises deep suspicion that South Korea's police force may have already been infiltrated by foreign agents. The third piece of evidence is the endless controversy over election fraud. Allegations such as ballot manipulation and poor vote counting management have been continuously raised in every election since the 2022 presidential election. Some international election monitoring groups have also expressed concerns about the lack of transparency in South Korea's election system. The election, the very foundation of democracy, has lost its credibility, yet Korean society remains eerily silent. Here,
President-elect Lee Jae-myung has long made unabashedly pro-China and pro-North Korea remarks, such as, the U.S. military is an occupying force, and we should say xie to China. In addition, the new Prime Minister, Kim Min-seok, once took part in an occupation protest at the U.S. Cultural Center, and his brother is an anti-American activist who is still engaged in anti-U.S. movements. And Jang Chung-rae, the leader of the Democratic Party of Korea, to which Lee belongs, is someone who once attempted, though failed, to set off a homemade bomb and committed arson at the U.S. Embassy. The fact that people like this have become national leaders and that a majority of citizens used their votes to make that possible, this is clear evidence of where South Korea is headed. What's more serious is that among the reasons for impeachment pushed by the Democratic Party was the charge of maintaining friendly relations with the U.S. and Japan, something completely incomprehensible for a citizen of an allied nation. Everyone, what do you think this means? It's a signal that the South Korean majority party is now defining the United States not as an ally, but as an enemy. The more shocking fact is that amidst this abnormal situation, countless Koreans remain silent. They do not speak out against the election fraud allegations, and they continue to vote for a party that chants anti-American slogans. This is not simple apathy. Could it be that Korean society itself is implicitly condoning anti-Americanism and communism? Charlie Kirk's death is not just a personal tragedy. The fact that his last destination was South Korea and that the threat of communism he warned about there is becoming a reality is a symbolic message for us. America must now wake up. We must realize that our most trusted ally, South Korea, is slowly falling under the influence of China and North Korea. Without a strong response, this trend cannot be reversed. We must help South Korea get back on its feet, even if it means using some tough love to bring them to their senses. It is now our turn to echo back Charlie Kirk's message to South Korea. Defend freedom. Do not surrender to communism. What do you think? How should we interpret this warning that Charlie Kirk's death has given us? Today, we followed Charlie Kirk's final footsteps to examine the shadow of communism looming over South Korean society. If you agree with today's broadcast, please lend your support by subscribing, liking, and turning on notifications so that more people can learn this truth. Charlie Kirk's death made me lose my will to broadcast for a while. I've now pulled myself together and will return with more in-depth content. Thank you.